On today's episode, we preview Toughest Mudder, Minnesota. This is the world's toughest podcast. Welcome to the world's toughest podcast, where we talk about any obstacle course race you'd like, as long as that's world's toughest mudder. Each week we talk to members of the WTM community and share stories of success and failure in the single greatest event in OCR. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the world's toughest podcast. Welcome back to World's Toughest Podcast. Thank you for listening. My name is Will Hicks, and I am recording this from my hotel room in Minnesota. I am here in town for Toughest Mudder Central, and looking forward to seeing some of you up here. Before we get started, you can email the show. Email me at willhicks@gmail.com. You can follow the show on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search World's Toughest Podcast. And you can call or text the show, 619-378-4369. 619-378-4369. You should call me. Leave me a voicemail, and it may be used on the show. Or send me a text message. I got several text messages through our listener line last week. Very cool. Thank you. 619-378-4369. We're going to talk Toughest Mudder, Minnesota in a minute. But first, let's read some iTunes reviews.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars. 5 stars.
Our first review comes from Jason on Stitcher. Jason from OCR Talk writes, 5 stars. Will, you may never see this, but I wanted to be the first to leave you a review on Stitcher. World's Toughest Pod is great. It may not be a weekly deal all through the year. You may even question if Will Hicks even likes OCR anymore. You may completely forget about him. But when he releases a new episode, you'll be right back alongside him, excited and giddy. Will is one of the best interviewers in the OCR podcast space. Do yourself a favor and add this to your favorites. Okay, Jason from OCR Talk, let's break this down, shall we? Will, you may never see this, but I wanted to be the first to leave you a review on Stitcher. Well, I saw it, Jason. Thank you. Very kind. I keep track of my reviews, as you know, and I did not know I had 0 reviews on Stitcher, though. That's a good point. So thank you for being the first. World's Toughest Pod is great. Thank you. Very kind. It may not be a weekly deal all through the year. Hang on. You may even question if Will Hicks even likes OCR anymore. Now wait. I am sitting in a dingy hotel room in Minnesota because I flew up here for an OCR race. So, no. You may completely forget about him. Well, that's fair. But when he releases a new episode, you'll be right back alongside him, excited and giddy. You know, that's actually one of the kindest things anyone's ever said. There are a few podcasts that I listen to that when I see a new episode is up, I'm like, woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! So if my show brings you 1/100th% of that, then that makes me happy as well. Will is one of the best interviewers in the OCR podcast space. Do yourself a favor and add this to your favorites. So you can just subscribe and leave a review. That would, I don't know about adding it to your, I don't know how they do that, but anyway. Jason from OCR Talk. Jason has a great podcast over there as well. So thank you for the kind words on Stitcher. If you'd like to be a part of the show like Jason from OCR Talk, you can leave a review also. Open the Purple Podcast app on your iPhone or iPad. Search for World's Toughest Podcast. Click our logo, scroll down, and write a review. You can also leave a review on Stitcher, but I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how to do it. So good on Jason for figuring that out. Leave us a review. I mentioned Jason's show on OCR Talk. 2 other shows you should check out, very proud of, on the OCR Report Network. The Overcome and Run podcast with Heather Olson. She will be in Minnesota with me as well this weekend. And the Obstacle Running Adventures podcast with Mike Stefano and Caitlin Ritter. And also, we don't talk about it a lot, check out our main OCR Report podcast. It's myself and Jack Bauer, usually, talking about race results and what's going on in the greater world of OCR, not just World's Toughest Mudder or Tough Mudder. Last episode, we talked about all of the races over in Europe, or the championship races, rather, in Europe that happened recently. So check those out. The OCR Report, Overcome and Run, and Obstacle Running Adventures. It's time to talk with Kemper Karmine. Kemper is going to be running Toughest Mudder Central this weekend up here in Minnesota. He has run World's Toughest Mudder 3 times. We talk about that. We talk about the course, talk about his strategy for nutrition and for wetsuits, which may surprise you. I'll tell you what, I'm here right now, and it's way warmer than I expected. Yeah, I know it's July, but it's Minnesota, right? You expected it to be cold. It's not cold here, so we'll see what happens this weekend. It's time to talk with Kemper Karmine. Let's go to the phones. Kemper Karmine, thanks for joining the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Will.
Kemper, tell me about your first World's Toughest Mudder.
First World's Toughest Mudder was in 2016 in Vegas. It was coming off of the year where I think in 15, lots of people got put out with hypothermia and everything. So those were the horror stories I heard throughout the year as I was running the regular courses, trying to get ready for my first Worlds. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Got 55 miles in my first year. Probably had time for another, but I was done. And spent several minutes standing up at the cliff, even though that was the reason why I wanted to do that from the moment I saw the video. But it was a little different when you're standing up there. It took a minute to get up the courage to jump off.
You said
and I came back for 7. Oh, go ahead.
Well, you say you did 55 miles. How many times did you have that decision there at the cliff?
I think based on when it opened, I think I jumped 3 times the first year. And then because, like I said, I was one of those people on my 11th lap who was just kind of hanging out and taking my time, trying to wait for that noon cutoff, so I didn't have to go back out. In 17, I think I jumped it 5 times based on when it was open. So I never took the penalty, but...
Tell me about 2018, last year in Atlanta.
2018 was a whole different ball game. That I think we all knew. We didn't quite know what to expect, but we knew it was going to be a lot different than Vegas. So I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Virginia, so Atlanta's kind of similar. When you look at the weather for November, you never know. It could be 70 degrees and sunny, or it could be 35 degrees and crappy. And I woke up Friday morning to my phone going off with a freeze warning for the weekend that was basically saying, don't go outside. It's going to be cold and not fun. And that's pretty much how it was out there. I was able to survive. I finished with 50 miles, but it was a ghost town overnight. You're walking through in Vegas, when you're walking through the middle of the night, 2 a.m., it got a little, the course would be a little less populated, but it was open and you could see headlamps and the tents and everything. Atlanta was a different story. You're in the middle of the woods all by yourself. It got a little creepy out there sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers, but I think those frost warnings, those were scary. Like the night before, everyone was getting those on their phones, like, dangerous, do not go outside. And I think that scared some people off.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people didn't.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It was, my first year was 2015, so I wasn't there for the sandstorm in 2014 or any of the New Jersey years, but that's the coldest Tough Mudder I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, I've never been that cold for that long. Fortunately for me, I run hot, so I was in probably thicker than a lot of people. I was in a 5 mil wetsuit, so temperature-wise, I wasn't freezing outside of my hands. I think I probably did 40 of the 50 miles with my hands tucked into my armpits.
What's the best moment you've ever had at a Tough Mudder, or maybe World's Toughest?
That first year was Worlds, just really wanting to get that brown bib, and crossing that finish line to getting that 50 miles, and then knowing I still got time to go back out there. But yeah, meeting my pit crew in the pit and getting that brown bib that first year was pretty special. Outside of that, it really just the regular weekends are what make the sport. I mean, the people out there are just amazing, and a lot of people that know me know I love helping people out and trying to coax people into getting over Berlin walls when they're too scared to do it and other obstacles like that. So, yeah, really just helping people out on a regular Tough Mudder and just hanging out with the crowd.
What's the lowest point you had at a Tough Mudder or World's Toughest?
It was honestly, it was probably not at Worlds. It was last year at Toughest Boston. I really wanted to get contender status, just not that I'm a contender for, was a contender for prize money or anything like that, but it was just really a personal goal. I really wanted to be able to do it. And I'm not even going to, I'll say it was about a half mile or maybe a mile into that first lap in that terrain. I knew I wasn't going to get the 30 miles that was required last year. And it took me a little while to get out of my head just to get out there, have fun, and just do whatever it was that I could. That was probably the lowest point mentally I've had out there.
How do you deal with that when you're out there, you're going to be out there for 8 hours, and 10 minutes into it, you're like, this is not going to go the way I wanted it to go?
Right. I guess probably that whole first lap, I knew to get 30 miles, I needed to do that lap in a certain amount of time. And I don't remember what I calculated for my own pace back then, but, I ended up finishing that first lap and probably 15 to 20 minutes slower than I knew I needed to. And a lot of that was all mental. I knew I couldn't make myself run fast enough on those rocks and that terrain in order to get what I needed. So after about that first lap, I was like, all right, I paid the however much money it was to come up here and do it. So I'm just going to keep going and see what I end up with. I finished with 25, which was fine. Nothing wrong with that. Like I said, it was just a mental thing.
Toughest Mudder Central is this weekend. Let's talk about the course map, and then we'll talk about your plan for a wetsuit, nutrition, and pitting for the race. It is a 5-mile course. There are 20 obstacles per lap. We're looking at the course map here. It looks like a pretty flat venue. Have you run in Minnesota before?
I have not, but when the toughest schedule came out for this year, I wanted to try and get contender status this year, so I wanted to try and get those 40 miles. And talking to a few people who've run the Minnesota course, they seemed to think that this was going to be the flattest of the three. And I believe the last 2 years, the Midwest courses have had the higher mileage numbers. I know I ran Chicago in 16, and I know the numbers were higher there. So that was one of the reasons why I signed up for Minnesota.
You mentioned it's a 12-hour course, 40 miles required to become a contender in the individual categories, 45 miles in the 2-person or 4-person team relays. Let's start talking about the obstacles, and you can tell me how you get through each obstacle. The first obstacle, it looks like right off the bat, is skid marked. What is skid marked?
Skid marked is the inverted wall, kind of slanted towards you. I'm a tall person. I'm 6'2", so skid mark for me is not really that difficult. It becomes more of a pain later in the race as you're getting tired. I know in Philly, toughest Philly, I looked at the volunteers I was coming through, and I don't even remember which lap, and I was like, this was much easier 6 laps ago. But actually, right off the bat, right out of the gate, I think will actually help a lot of people out. For like the shorter folks who might need a boost, they'll be able to time coming through the start line a little bit better, so that they'll be like, all right, there's somebody going that I'm sure will, help give me a boost over the wall. So I think that will actually help some people out.
The second obstacle is Black Widow. Black Widow is a new obstacle this year since World's Toughest. Tell me about Black Widow.
Black Widow is just a series of, I call them slack lines. I know that's not exactly the right term. I'm not sure what they are. They're just a whole bunch of lines that are weaved all through that you have to balance your way across and maneuver stepping over and under different slack lines to make your way across. It's not really that difficult. It only becomes a somewhat of a challenge if there's a lot of people on it, because then there's a lot of people pulling and making the lines bounce. But take your time, you can get through it pretty easily.
After Black Widow is a pretty long run, and then you'll pass your first mile marker. The third obstacle is Hold Your Wood.
Just a tree stump carry. Nothing too major there. I think we've all done that one several times, so nothing too big.
Right after Hold Your Wood is Devil's Beard. Tell me about Devil's Beard.
This one could be interesting. If I'm not sure if Carlo got back to Tough Mudder on ideas on how to change Devil's Beard or not, but this one is the one that could be up for a community change. Basically, it's just a cargo net that's tied low to the ground, and you have to crawl under it. So this one could be interesting if they have some sort of change built into the course here. I don't know, maybe we could see the version from Worlds a couple of years ago where there's a trench dug, and then you got to climb out underneath the cargo net. I don't know.
You're right. 9 times out of 10, it's just a net staked to the ground, right? But then at Worlds 2017, it had terrain you had to traverse underneath that net. 2015, there were tires under the net you had to climb over. So, and then the UK has this crazy version they've been doing of it. So it could be just a normal net you crawl under, or it could be a big pain every single. Well, it's going to be a pain either way. But
yeah. Just bring a big pair of scissors and just cut it right down the middle at the start of the race.
Do you go head first or butt first?
I go head first. Every time I've tried going backwards, it's ended up rubbing my back raw on that rope. So I just kind of, depending on how tight it is, either bear crawl it, or a lot of the times it's not quite that tight that I can not stand up all the way, but pretty much just plow through it.
Something to be aware of is your headlamp when it's overnight. You don't want to lose your headlamp.
Yes, definitely pull it around your neck. I recommend the veteran trick I learned from my first Worlds. Tie your headlamp on a string to your bib, and then for any of the obstacles where it might get pulled off, drop it down around your neck. That way you don't have to worry about it.
After Devil's Beard, the fifth obstacle is Mud Mile.
That one is always interesting when it comes to a toughest event, because you never know how deep they're going to dig those trenches. A lot of the times you can solo them if you go along the outside edges, and then they have those years like we did in 16 in Atlanta where I swear they were 8 feet deep and took three-person teams in order to maneuver your way across that thing.
That's the worst Mud Mile I've ever done. Toughest Mudder Atlanta 2016, right? Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah, 2016.
You were just sapped of energy. You were covered in this disgusting Atlanta clay mud that would dry and stick to you and harden, and it took 20 or 30 minutes to get through, and you had to go down and back. Yeah, that was a tough one.
And back. Yeah, I remember I was running with a buddy of mine, and it was open on our first lap that year. And we were coming through, and I'm like, wow, we're going to finish this lap in good time, even with having obstacles open and everything. And I'm like, we've got, I don't remember what was after that, but it was like we have Mud Mile and like one more obstacle or something. And then I look down at my watch after I get out of there, and I'm like, well, there went the good time on that first lap. That was 15 to 20 minutes, I think it took us to get through that.
And then sometimes you're right. Like we're running on Saturday night. Saturday morning, there's gonna be a regular Tough Mudder. Waves and waves and waves going through. They might wear it down. Where by the time we get there Saturday night, it's just kind of hopping over these little, hills.
Yeah, it really depends on what they're digging in. If it's that thick clay mud like we get the pleasure of enjoying in Atlanta, they don't go away. The walls don't go away too much. But if it's the, I guess what is it, like the silty type sand stuff? Yeah, those break down pretty quick. So I'm not sure what we're dealing with here in Minnesota when it comes to that.
The next obstacle is Augustus Gloop 2.0.
This is the newer version of Augustus Gloop. I always really enjoyed it. Kind of a good way to clean yourself off, especially with the way this course is set up. So right after Mud Mile, if it is a thick, muddy one, then this will help to wash off some of that mud. Basically, you get in a pit of water, duck under a what are those, like plastic sewer pipe things, and then climb up a wooden wall with either holes or slats cut into the wood with water pouring down on your head. With the temperature we've got going, what it looks like for Minnesota, I don't really see the temperature being an issue. So really, I think it's just going to help clean people off.
The only real trick I know is keep your head tucked down so you can breathe as you're ascending.
Yes, if Gloop can be a little bit tricky if you have any bit of claustrophobia issues. So yeah, keeping your head down, that would definitely help with that.
After Augustus Gloop is the Gauntlet. Tell me about the Gauntlet.
The Gauntlet, for the two events I've been to so far this year, it's been the same setup. But they mentioned to us last year that they can potentially bring in different obstacles. So the Gauntlet is basically 4 obstacles rolled into one. It starts with Twinkle Toes, which is a balance beam. So Twinkle Toes into Gut Buster, which basically you're doing a plank across 2 metal poles. Get across that and into, what was it called? Hanging Tough, I think was the version before Kong. So not quite the real tall rings, but just a set of rings to get across. Into Just the Tip, which you're hanging onto some 2x4s and then switching from that to some trailer hitches and just a metal pole and then back to the 2x4s again. I was able to complete it every time at Toughest Philly. The issue I had with it was really it saps your strength, especially towards the end, because it's 4 obstacles rolled into one. So take your time, take a breath before you get to each section. There's a platform to stand on. You're not going right from one to the next. Obviously, unless you're really going for time, you got to try and fly across it. But catch your breath, take your time, and you should be fine. They did mention to us last year that they could potentially switch out some sections. So I haven't seen that yet this year, but maybe we could see the Kong Infinity version instead of the rings or something like that. I don't know.
They really could stick any little obstacle in there as the second or third, or anywhere they want, and it's kind of interchangeable.
Right. We could have what was it? I think it was Hanging Tough that in 17 in Worlds, but they had different hand grips on some of them. Right. They weren't all just rings when they started the race. So we could see something like that. We could see the Kong Infinity version instead of just the tip part. Don't really know. But it's a fun obstacle.
After the Gauntlet is Arctic Enema.
We've all done that one. Jump in a dumpster full of ice and get your way through it as quick as you can. Again, we're looking at the temps right now are in the 80s during the day and mid-60s overnight. If you're one of those people who run cold, Arctic can be painful. Otherwise, I don't really see Arctic as being too bad of an issue with the temps we've got going for this one. It was rough a couple of years ago for Philly Toughest when it was 30-some degrees outside and then having to get through that ice.
The only trick I go by with Arctic Enema is it doesn't get warmer the longer you stare at it. So just get in.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. If you're sitting there trying to talk yourself into going through it, like you said, it might actually get colder because they might dump a bag of ice in there while you're waiting. So yeah, just get through it.
After Arctic Enema is the 2-mile marker, and you'll have the one and only water station on the course. And then the 9th obstacle is Ladder to Hell.
Ladder to Hell is just the climb up a wooden structure, up and over. Again, I'm tall, so I don't have much of an issue of reaching from one to the next. And I don't really have the big fear of heights, so making the traverse at the top is not that hard. It does get tricky for some people who are scared of heights. I would recommend just straddling the 2 top boards and then getting your hand grips secure and then swinging that one leg over and then make your way down. But that one's not too tricky.
After Ladder to Hell is Leap of Faith.
Leap of Faith is one of the new ones. That's a fun obstacle. It's one of the better, newer ones we've got. You're jumping to a cargo net. You're climbing up the cargo net and then sliding down a pole on the other side. And it's, of course, over water. I will say anybody that ran Worlds last year, compared to the 2 events I've run so far this year, the jump has not been as far. I think we had a pretty big jump to the cargo net at Worlds. It's not as far so far this year.
They're making it a little easier than at Worlds.
Yeah, I think mainly because you've got the regular course and they're not trying to completely punish everyone like they are at Worlds. They know they've got people out here who are doing this for the first time and not us idiots that are out there willing to do it for 24 straight hours.
After Leap of Faith is a long run. It looks like about 3/4 of a mile, maybe 0.8 of a mile to the 11th obstacle.
That is a long run.
It is. That's the longest run on the whole course without an obstacle. The next obstacle will be Funky Monkey, the Revolution.
The long run will actually help because Funky Monkey gets tricky when it gets wet. And in years, I'm sure you've done a toughest where it's like, oh, here's Arctic Enema, and I can see Funky Monkey right around the corner.
You know they do that on purpose, right? They totally do that on purpose.
They absolutely do it on purpose. It was a little bit better in Philly. I think we had, I can't remember what it was. It was a mud obstacle, and then we had Black Widow, and then we had Funky Monkey. So it wasn't right after, but your hands were still kind of muddy, which made it more difficult later in the race. But with this long run beforehand, we should have a good chance to get our hands dry and clean. Wipe your hands on the grass and whatever you got to do, get the mud off. And then it's the inverted monkey bars to the sets of wheels. Biggest tip for the wheels is don't hesitate. Once you swing to the next wheel, immediately grab it. I have a very hard time if I miss the grab, or like the first few times I tried that, I wasn't real confident in just immediately grabbing the next wheel. I have a very hard time getting the swing going again. So for me, the trick is just to grab that next wheel as soon as you swing forward. Don't hesitate.
After Funky
and
Monkey.
when you
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. One more tip for Funky. When you finish the monkey bars and you go to grab that first horizontal wheel, grab it with either a switch grip or a complete reverse grip. That way, when you spin around the wheels, you're facing in the right direction and you're not having to reach behind you.
Good tip. After Funky Monkey is Spread Eagle.
They're using the slack lines just like they have at Black Widow, but this time you got to lay on a couple and pull yourself across. I know at Worlds, and I saw people trying in Virginia, some people like to lay on them and roll across. To me, that seemed way more difficult in order to get off of the obstacle, but not really that difficult. Lay down, pull yourself across the lines, and then come off the other side. The big advantage here is our wetsuits will not be freezing to the metal like they were in Atlanta.
The 13th obstacle is Cage Crawl. Tell me about Cage Crawl, what you've seen at toughest this year.
For cage crawl, because they have the new level up lanes for a few of the obstacles. Cage crawl, the regular version, you lie on your back in some water with cage chain link fence over top of your head, and you just pull yourself across. And then the level up lane actually has a sheet of plexiglass type material laying in the water, so you actually have to completely submerge yourself under it in order to get through the obstacle. In Philly, they weren't making you choose one side or the other for any of the obstacles that had level up lanes. So you could choose the plexiglass side if you wanted. I never saw anyone go to that side. Everyone went to the other side without the glass. Cage crawl, the only difficulty I ever have is when they fill those things really full of water and you're pressed up to that cage. Most of the time it's not that bad, especially for the toughest events, because I think they're nice enough to not refill them after the daytime runners. And enough water has been splashed out so that you're able to just pull yourself through. Just again, it's one of those obstacles the kind of just take your time. You should be fine, even if it is filled with water. Try not to panic and just get yourself across. Just remember that the cages do raise, so hopefully that can help stop you from freaking out some.
That's true. Worst case scenario, you just put your feet under you and stand up, and you're fine. So
yep, yes, they do take a little bit of force coming from that angle, but that you can press them up.
After cage crawl is hydrophobia.
Hydrophobia was another one of the new ones we had at Worlds and new on course this year. The hardest part of hydrophobia is getting into the obstacle, especially if you're tall. So you stand on a hay bale or whatever they have in front of it, sit on another dumpster type apparatus, and then there's the half submerged sewer pipe that you have to crawl through. Again, the hardest part's getting in and out of it. Trying to maneuver a 6'2" frame is not the easiest thing to get through that obstacle.
This one's kind of stressful for me. Like this tube's not half full of water, but it's got water in it, and it can get.
I remember. Yeah, somebody posted questions after Worlds last year about some of the safety issues or something they saw on course, and somebody posted something about hydrophobia, and it never crossed my mind the entire time I was out there at Worlds. But somebody said, "What is that thing? Is there something underneath those tubes? If that structure breaks and it falls into the water, what happens? Are you completely trapped?"
You know what? If something happened and you're in the middle of that pipe, I don't think you have a chance. It's not like, I don't know if this is true, but I heard someone say that there is something underneath the tube in the water, so that if that did happen, it would not sink all the way down. You would still be okay. I don't know if that's true. It's just what I heard. You got to imagine they've had, their insurance companies look at it, and so I'm sure it's safe. But man, it gets in your head. That one messes with me more than cage crawl does. Yeah,
well, cage crawl, again, you can, like you said, if you know that the cage lifts up, then you know that you can really get that part out of your head. I know some people don't know that the cage lifts up, and I think that's what panics a lot of people. But yeah, you're right. Hydrophobia, you're in there. So if you're a claustrophobic type person, then that one can definitely mess with your head.
Yeah, so I'd say just get in and get out as fast as possible.
Yep, exactly.
After hydrophobia is Berlin Walls.
Yeah, and that does not look like that far of a run. Berlin Wall is... They need to take the S off because we only have one wall anymore. But it's a pretty tall wall with a little lip that you can get your foot on. Again, like I said before, I'm tall, so I don't really have much of an issue with that one. Some people might need a boost. In Philly, they were not making us do the level up version of T-boned. It was whatever wall was open, you could go for it. But this one does not look like it has a very long run after hydrophobia. So that the top, when that wall gets slick, sometimes it can be a little bit of a problem for people hanging onto the slick wall and pulling themselves over. But that's, it's one of those things. People don't mind helping other people out. So if you need a boost, ask for it.
After Berlin Walls is Little Run. You'll hit your 4-mile marker. And then the 16th obstacle is Everest 2.0.
Yeah, Everest, I am not a sprinter, that is for sure. So I do not have burst speed. So I can do Everest by myself when it is completely dry. When it starts to get slick, I have trouble. So Everest is one of those that for most people are going to need a hand. So run up, grab whoever's up there, grab their hand. Hopefully there's two, so that way they can help you up and over the wall. Then you should tag out one person so they can run on, and you can sit there and turn around and pull up the next person. So that's how it was working at Philly earlier this year, and it went pretty well the first few laps until some people started tapping out, and there's not as many people coming through it at the same time.
When you were at Philly, did they have the ropes thrown down?
No, there were no ropes. Just good old Francis up at the top.
Yeah, Francis, and he's kind of known for hanging out there for the whole, maybe not the whole 12 hours or 8 hours, but he spends a lot of time at the top of Everest. And some guys do that. If maybe they hurt their ankle, they twist, they get an injury, and they're like, well, I'll just hang out at Everest and help people then. Yep, absolutely. After Everest,
thoroughly thank all of those people who are willing to do it. I'm not sure how their arms are still in socket after the event, but thank you very much.
After Everest 2.0 is Pyramid Scheme.
Assuming it'll be like all the other toughest that we have, the ropes should be down. So it's just a inverted slip wall. Use the ropes, pull yourself up. Not really too much of a challenge for the toughest events.
The 18th obstacle is Block Ness Monster.
Block Ness, fun obstacle as long as you're with people who know what they're doing. Can be a frustrating obstacle when you're there and people are not listening. But for the toughest events, pretty much most of the people know how to do it. About 3 to 4 people should be able to get the block spinning, depending on who's there. 1 to 2 people go up at a time. When you get to the top, turn around, pull down, and try and keep the momentum going. If you're, I'll say tall-ish, it can be soloed. So sometimes for the toughest events, that actually makes it easier when you get there and you're by yourself. Because then you can just get through it faster. So I've gotten there with one other person several times, and one person tossed the other one up to the top, and then and then if you need help, then that person should be able to help you up and over. But 2 people can do it pretty easily, and then obviously if you're taller, you can solo it by yourself.
Some of the confusion when there's a lot of people there is who's going next? And it always made sense to me, like the 2 people on the outside are always the next one to go. But that's never really caught on. If everyone did that, I think it would make it so simple. Like 2 outside guys go, everyone else pushes. 2 outside guys go, everyone else pushes. But
it's one of those when you
at the same time.
When you've run it so many times, and it's like, this should be easy for everyone, and then it's like, all right, 2 people ride it up, and then you look and there's 6, and you're like, you people can't count. So it can be frustrating on a regular day, on a regular Tough Mudder day, but it's a fun obstacle.
But I think it's the funnest obstacle out there. Even overnight when you're miserable and cold, it's still fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The next to last obstacle, 19th obstacle, is electroshock therapy. How did they handle EST at Philly?
There was a penalty. So you could either take the penalty or go through it. I am not a fan of electricity. I think it's different for every single person. I've I see people who can go in there and just grab the wires and it doesn't seem to affect them. The first time I did electroshock therapy at my first event, I got hit right in my hip bone. I didn't feel my leg for 3 hours. So I am not a huge fan. So for Philly, I took the penalty every time until my seventh and eighth laps, because I knew I was running short on time and I had to just plow through it. So yeah, it was a little bit of a penalty run.
The last obstacle on the course is Mutterhorn.
The big giant A-frame structure that we had in 16 at Worlds. That was such an amazing visual sight, and then I think a lot of us missed it in 17, and we're glad to see it back for 18 until we had to try and get on the thing, which was the change they made. So it starts with a big slip wall. In Philly, we had two 2x4s on the wall. So it wasn't like at Worlds where you had to get all the way up to the top of the 10-foot wall. You were able to stand on a 2x4 and then jump your way up. So it was a little bit easier at Philly.
So you could solo it at that start?
Yes, you could solo it at the start. The problem we had at Philly, the nets were too loose. Not like a safety issue too loose. It just made it harder to climb. I know a lot of people like to climb the structure part of it. I have big feet, so I have a hard time maneuvering my feet in those metal slats with the cargo net going through. But yeah, it was really loose in Philly, and it took a long time to climb, to get over that. I know some people have figured out a strategy that they can fly through it. I never did. I saved my wristbands, which I guess we'll get to in a second. I saved my wristbands for the last 2 laps, so I didn't climb it my last 2 laps.
The only tricks
too time consuming.
The only tricks I've heard for Mutterhorn are, like you said, going up the actual climbing the metal structure that's underneath the cargo netting, and then Javier Escobar told me he goes down face first, so he'll have his back to the structure, kind of sliding down and slowing himself down using the safety net, which sounds super sketchy to me, but it works for him.
Yeah, I saw that. Maybe I'll give it a shot. It sounds. I'm not sure I could get over the visual part of trying to make myself come down when I'm, looking out over everything rather than looking exactly where my foot is going to go the next time. I don't know.
You mentioned the wristbands. Tell me about these are a new thing for 2019. Tell me about the wristbands and how they work.
Yes, assuming we have the same format that we did in Philly, after your 20th mile, you were given a wristband that could be used to bypass any obstacle on the course. And then you earned another wristband for each lap that you completed. I know a lot of people will use them at, say they have problems with Funky Monkey. So after their 4th lap, they will just hand it off every time they go to Funky Monkey and not have to take the penalty. My plan at Philly was to save all of my wristbands until the very end. My thought behind that was, even if I have to take a penalty somewhere on lap 6, I'll have more energy than I will on lap 8. So I saved my wristbands I used one at Mutterhorn on lap 7, and that left me with 3 wristbands to use on my 8th lap, which I then used at Funky Monkey, Everest, and then at Mutterhorn again.
Are you pretty happy with that strategy? You going to do it again?
Yes, I will. If it's the same format, I will absolutely do that again. Like I said, I was able to complete the gauntlet every time. My thought before, I thought I would be using one at the gauntlet because it takes the longest to complete, but I was able to complete that every time So once Funky got wet and muddy, that became more of a challenge. And like I mentioned before, once Everest gets wet, I struggle with it. And those penalties in Philly, if you're familiar with the Philly course, it involved more hills. So I was like, all right, I will save them and use them here at the end. So yes, I will use the same strategy again here.
I think
for Minnesota.
Another kind of factor playing into the decision could be penalty length. If it's
yes, absolutely.
If it's a hard obstacle but it's a short penalty, well, you know what? I'll fail this obstacle. I'll keep my wristband. I'll take the penalty. You remember in Chicago a couple years ago, the penalty for failing or for skipping operation was like a 1.25 mile run.
Yeah, they they got me at that course because I got shocked at operation in Atlanta, at toughest Atlanta, really bad. And I said, never again. This is not, whatever the penalty is not worth this. So when I got to Chicago, I took the penalty on the first lap. I know they warned us that it was going to be long. I was running, and I said, I thought I was lost.
For a while, you're like, am I even on the course? Like, where is everybody?
Yeah, I mean, if it hadn't have been cut completely, if the path hadn't been cut straight through a cornfield or wheat field or whatever it was, I absolutely would have thought I was lost, because that penalty was so long. So it worked. They got me to do operation the rest of the course, but I wasn't a happy camper.
I like the wristbands. I like this, a little bit of strategy, forcing you to think, use your brain, not just your muscles and your endurance. Very similar to the Golden Carabiners that they've had
absolutely.
in the past.
I know a lot of people used it a lot of people got cold in Philly. I think we got into the 50s overnight. I stayed in my t-shirt the whole time. But I did see full wetsuits and everything like that. So I know a lot of people turned theirs in at Arctic Enema just because they didn't want to get cold again. I personally did not think Philly was that cold, so that was not a consideration for me. It was more of which obstacles do I know I'm going to have trouble with that are going to have a penalty, and then, like I said, Mutterhorn just took so long to climb. It wasn't worth it's not a difficult obstacle or even really that taxing of one. It was just guaranteed to take 5 minutes to get up and over it, if not longer.
The weather is projected to have a high of 84 and a low of 66 Fahrenheit. That's 29 and 19 Celsius. 18% chance of thunderstorms overnight. What do you think about the weather?
The weather actually sounds, as long as the thunderstorms stay away, but the weather sounds perfect to me. That is very similar to what we had in Atlanta for that first toughest a couple of years ago, and most people were in shorts and a t-shirt. Don't know if we'll quite have the humidity we had at that event, but mid 80s during the day and 60s overnight. Pretty similar to what we had in Philly. I think Philly was probably about 8 to 10 degrees colder overnight. But that's perfect weather for me. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure that will still be cold for some people, in and out of the water if you're not moving that fast. But other than that, I think we're looking at good weather.
Are you going to wear a wetsuit?
No, I'm not even planning on bringing mine for this one. Normally, I would be the person that says you're better to have it with you and not need it. But, I'm flying for this event, not driving, so I can't take whatever I want with me. So, but if I was able to do Philly in just a t-shirt, I'm pretty sure I'll be okay temperature-wise.
What kind of shoes do you run in?
I run in Ultras, the Lone Peaks.
At the end of each 5-mile lap, you will have a chance to go into the pit area. You get nutrition, change clothes, take a nap if you want. What is your plan for pitting and for nutrition?
Pitting, pretty much just get in and get out as fast as possible. I don't really have too much of a set nutritional plan. I pretty much just grab a box of Uncrustables, a couple of bananas, and then some goos and gummies and stuff like that, and I'll just grab something after each lap. I don't run with tailwind or anything like that, so I'm one of those rare people that I kind of have an iron stomach, so I can eat and continue to run. So yeah, I for these events I live off of Uncrustables and Honey Stinger goos.
Well, Kemper, that's the course. What do you think? Overall thoughts?
I think we're in for a good time. I think it's going to be a fun course. For anybody who hasn't run a Tough Mudder yet this year, the events have been great. Philly Toughest was incredible. They had movies showing for the pit crews. I think I remember people saying Hook was on, and I know there was another movie. I don't remember what it was. So your pit crews will have a blast. Hopefully they're there to support you and aren't off watching the movie eating popcorn, but they'll have something to do in between time while you're out on the course. And the course looks great. Looks like a fun one.
Kemper, is there anything you'd like to plug before we go?
No, I don't have anything.
How can people follow you on social media?
Pretty much I'm on Facebook. That's pretty much it. I'm not really on anything else. Just tip for everybody out there, just push yourself past what you think you're capable of. I finished Toughest Philly. I got 40 miles in Philly. I really didn't think that was going to be possible. I'm working with a trainer this year for the first time, Stephen Shade. That definitely helped me out a lot. But my last lap, I went into the pit, and I was talking to Cody Brown and MJ Perry. I'm like, I'm going to go back out, but I honestly don't think I'm going to finish this lap in time. I have to run it faster than I did lap 7 in order to finish in time. And talk to people when you're out there on the course. I had several people who talked to me on that lap 7 and 8 and were like, what lap are you on? And I said, this is lap 8. I'm trying to get back. And they were like, all right, well, let me help you. Let's try and run a little bit. So talk to people that are out there, even if maybe you're not having the race you want to have, maybe you can help someone else get to their goal. So help out where you can, run to push other people when you can. And like I said, I didn't think I was going to finish that last lap in time, finished with 4 minutes to spare. So push yourself beyond what you think you're capable of.
Kemper, that is such a good point. When I ran Chicago 2 years ago, I was on my last lap, and I wanted to get back to make contender status. And I didn't think it was the same deal. Like, I had to do my last lap faster than that lap before. And there were guys out there, maybe they couldn't help me up an obstacle, but, I was like, I need to get back. And they're like, all right, I'll run with you for a while. And they ran, it was, even if you're not like, you can't pull someone up Everest, especially toward the very end of the course. Like, look for people that look like they're trying to, make it back in time to finish that lap. And you can help them out.
Yeah, I know. I can remember at least 3 instances over the last 2 laps where I was talking to somebody on the course, and I'm like, and I'd be like, all right, I'm on lap 7, and I was like, I'm not sure I got enough time, and whoever, like I said, I don't even know their names. I hadn't met them before, but it was 3 different times. They were like, all right, come on, let's run a little bit. And like I said, I finished with 4 minutes to spare, so every single one of those running steps mattered.
Kemper, any last thoughts before we go?
No. Are you running this weekend?
I am. I'll see you out there.
Awesome. Yep, I think it's going to be a great time. Can't wait.
Kemper Karmine, thanks much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Will.
Special thanks to Kemper Karmine for being our guest this week. Well done, Kemper. Will I see you at Toughest Mudder, Minnesota? I am going to be out there, and I'm going to have World's Toughest Podcast stickers. If you would like a sticker, here's what you need to do. Leave a review for the podcast, and then find me before the race or after the race. I'm not going to have them out on course, so don't even try. But I would love to give you a sticker. Come find me at Toughest Mudder Central. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Shoot me a text or leave me a voicemail, 619-378-4369. You want to be on the podcast? Leave me a voicemail. I will see you soon. Go spend time with someone you love.